Right now, somewhere on Earth, someone is leaning in for a kiss. Maybe it's a goodbye at an airport. Maybe it's a first date that's going surprisingly well. They're not thinking about biology. They're not thinking about evolution. They're just doing it, the way humans have done it for longer than anyone can really trace. But here's the strange part. Kissing isn't just a romantic gesture. For a huge chunk of human history, it may have worked like a biological background check, a way to taste and smell another person closely enough to size them up as a mate without ever saying a word. It's older than perfume, older than makeup, arguably older than spoken language as we know it. And the question is, how did humans turn something this animal, this basic, into one of the most universal romantic gestures on the planet? To answer that, we don't start with humans. We start with chimpanzees. Primatologists have long observed chimps and bonobos pressing their mouths together, sometimes briefly, sometimes with real intensity, tongues and all. It's not about romance. It's about bonding, reassurance, and reconciliation after conflict. Two chimps who were just fighting will sometimes kiss and make up, literally. Now, here's the detail that makes this interesting. Mother chimps and early human mothers, most likely, chewed food before passing it mouth to mouth into their infant's mouth. It's called pre-mastication, and it wasn't affectionate at first. It was practical. Babies couldn't chew tough food, so mom did it for them. But that act came with a side effect nobody planned. Constant, direct mouth-to-mouth contact between parent and child. Saliva, microbes, immune signals, all getting shared, early and often. Think about that. Before kissing was ever romantic, it may have been nutritional. A feeding strategy that just happened to involve intimate mouth contact. That's the deep root. But the story doesn't stay in the animal kingdom for long. Fast forward to ancient South Asia, roughly 3,500 years ago. Vedic Sanskrit texts, some of the oldest religious writings in human history, describe people sniffing with their mouths as a sign of affection. Scholars studying these texts believe this is one of the earliest written references to something resembling a kiss. Not passionate, not sexual necessarily, more like an intimate greeting, closer to nuzzling. Around the same era, halfway across the world in Mesopotamia, archaeologists have found clay tablets, some over 4,500 years old, containing love poetry that references kissing between lovers. One famous set of Sumerian poems tied to the goddess Inanna describes romantic and sexual kissing in surprisingly explicit detail for something carved in clay millennia ago. So, by roughly the same window in history, two completely separate civilizations, thousands of miles apart, no contact with each other, were independently writing about kissing as an act of desire. That's not a coincidence you'd expect from a purely cultural invention. That's a pattern that looks a lot more instinctual. But here's the problem. If kissing were purely instinctual, hardwired into every human being, you'd expect it to show up in every culture on Earth. And it doesn't. In 2015, anthropologist William Jankowiak led a study surveying 168 cultures around the world, looking for evidence of a romantic sexual kissing. The results surprised a lot of people. Fewer than half of those cultures, around 46%, showed any evidence of it at all. Some indigenous groups in Central Africa, Papua New Guinea, and parts of the Amazon had no romantic kissing tradition whatsoever before contact with outside cultures. So it's not universal. It's not purely instinct, like a sneeze or a flinch. It's something in between. A behavior humans are primed for, but which culture has to switch on. Here's what makes this so important. If kissing isn't guaranteed by biology alone, then something else has to explain why it kept independently popping up in unconnected civilizations for thousands of years. And that's where things get genuinely strange. Enter the immune system. Every human carries a set of genes called the MHC, the major histocompatibility complex, which basically controls how your immune system recognizes threats. And it turns out humans can unconsciously detect MHC differences in other people through smell. In a well-known 1990 study often nicknamed the sweaty t-shirt experiment, researcher Claudia Wedekind had women smell shirts worn by different men and rate how attractive the scent was. Women consistently preferred the scent of men whose MHC genes were noticeably different from their own, which, biologically, tends to produce offspring with stronger immune systems. Now, here's the twist that connects it all back to kissing. Saliva carries chemical information too. Hormones, immune markers, even traces of MHC-related compounds. Some researchers, including those behind popular science research summarized in Cheryl Kirschenbaum's book, The Science of Kissing, argue that close mouth-to-mouth contact may function as an unconscious taste and smell test, a split-second biological gut check on whether this person is a genetically compatible match, not romantic, not poetic. A screening process dressed up as affection. Think about that for a second. Every awkward first kiss, every nervous, does this feel right moment, some scientists believe part of that instinctive reaction might be your immune system quietly running a background check through smell and taste, faster than your conscious brain can even process it. Same. I'd also like my immune system to just text me the results instead. But the story doesn't stop as pure biology, because humans, being humans, couldn't leave it at instinct. Once ancient civilizations started writing love poetry about kissing, it stopped being just a private biological signal and became a public cultural symbol. Something performed, celebrated, painted on pottery, carved into temple walls, eventually filmed in movies and printed on greeting cards. The instinct came first, the meaning came later, and humans layered thousands of years of romance, art, and ritual on top of what may have started as a feeding behavior between a mother and a hungry infant. So here's the full picture. It starts with chimps reconciling after a fight. It becomes mothers feeding infants mouth to mouth. It shows up independently in Vedic India and ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of miles apart, within the same historical window. It fails to appear in nearly half the cultures studied on Earth, proving it's not pure instinct. And underneath it all might be an ancient, unconscious immune system test, disguised for thousands of years as romance. So next time you lean in for a kiss without thinking twice about it, that's not a small moment. That's millions of years of primate bonding, ancient feeding behavior, ancient poetry, and quiet biological screening, all compressed into 2 seconds of contact. Turns out, one of the most human things you do might not be about romance at all. It might just be love, dressed up as biology, dressed up as instinct, all the way down. If you liked figuring out where this weird little habit actually came from, there's more of these buried in the everyday things you do without thinking. Might be worth sticking around for the next one.